Good morning. The Lord has been laying it on my heart lately, and I really need to talk about this because I've been having a lot of nightmares, and I just want to talk about this, a subject that I think a lot of people deal with. It's walking on eggshells and being around people that walk on eggshells, or us actually having people walk on eggshells around us. When I mention toxic or narcissist in this video, I'm not talking about today's definition where everybody is considered a narcissist or toxic, depending on the person that's saying it. I'm talking about real psychological abuse. Walking on eggshells is when you have to be on guard around somebody because you don't know when they're going to get mad, what you're going to do to make them mad. It's usually something small or not even anything anybody else would be angry with. It's just them. And this puts your sympathetic nervous system into high alert. It puts you into fight or flight constantly. It wears your body down to be fight or flight constantly around somebody because you're walking on eggshells, you're tiptoeing around somebody so they don't get mad at you, or you're trying to prevent anything from getting them mad or have an attitude with you or give you the silent treatment. It has a great effect on your mental and emotional health, but it also affects your physical health. I say this from experience. I don't have to have any kind of degree in counseling. In fact, a lot of counselors are not informed trauma-wise. They really don't know how to handle psychological abuse or any kind of abuse, really, when it comes to a lot of psychologists. I'm not saying all, but a lot do not have the information, especially in the Christian circles. I think it's really neglected in Christian circles and in counseling because people just want to make everybody reconcile and bring relationships together, and they just don't give the right advice to people about psychological abuse or any type of abuse. And the illnesses that walking on eggshells can cause, it can actually cause autoimmune diseases. It can cause all kinds of chronic illness. It can make your blood sugars fluctuate. Just dealing, your adrenal gland is constantly pumping out like you're in an accident or whatever, just worrying when that somebody gets home. What are they going to be mad about today? What did I do wrong? Is there something I didn't do? Going around the house and making sure that you did exactly everything, and then something still isn't right. It can be something, the smallest thing. You didn't hang the towel right, or one of the kids put the toilet paper on backwards. It's that feeling of anxiety on holidays where you don't even want to do holidays anymore. And it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. This can be a family member. It can be a child, a co-worker, anybody who makes you feel micromanaged and walking on eggshells can do this to you. And after a long period of time, it can absolutely physically harm you. A lot of autoimmune diseases, the one thing they list as causes, because they don't really know what causes most of them, they say environmental. And they're not just talking about outside environmental. They're talking about environment in the home, environment in your life, dysfunction in families that can create illnesses, not genetically, but from being around this toxicity. And like I said, I mean real toxicity, to the point where it has caused you to not know whether you're coming or going. And this is how it is. And some people go from fight or flight, and after they're in a relationship like this for a long time, or, like I said, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, just around somebody all the time, they can go into what they say is freeze or fawn, where you just freeze around the person and you don't even you just shut them out And then they get mad because they say you don't care or you don't react to anything, but you're just in like self-preservation mode, or fawn, where you fawn over them and try to do everything possible to make them happy. And a lot of this goes back to being codependent. A lot of people don't like to say they're codependent, especially men. That dependent thing is the word that bothers them. Ross Rosenberg calls it self-love deficit, because he knows that men don't like it. But it is what it is. You have to do whatever it takes to try to make this person happy, and if they're not happy, you're not happy. But I'm not going to go into all that today. A lot of people that call themselves empaths, not all of them, but a lot of people that call themselves empaths are actually codependent. And I think that term empath is damaging, because a lot of people aren't getting the help that they need to fix this. And the thing with the walking on eggshells is, you wonder why people don't leave, and they stay and they put up with this for decades. And there's a bond there. It's called a trauma bond is there. This person constantly love bombs them and discards them, gaslights them, telling them, I didn't do that. I don't do that to you. I never did this. You're making things up. You're crazy. They tell you that what you are experiencing, what you've seen, what you've lived isn't real. And after a while, they tell that to you so often that you start believing them. It is just psychological, emotional, and mental abuse. And like I said, it physically harms you. And so many people get stuck in these kind of relationships because they become physically ill, and then they can't financially get out of the situation because they're no longer able to work. And this is the part that's really been weighing on me, that I've been having, nightmares about and stuff, because when I left, I was more abused than I was in the relationship, to a point. But just know, think about yourself too. We can end up with these traits. And a lot of people do. When you live with it and you dealt with it, you can end up with these traits where you make people walk on eggshells. And it's not because you want to. Sometimes you just are on guard and have to self-preserve. And God doesn't want anybody to feel this way. You don't have to be a Christian or believe in God to listen to this message. I'm pretty much keeping it for all ears. But to my believers and to those that need some kind of hope and are looking and seeking, seek Jesus. The love that you're looking for, the love that you're missing, that hole in your heart, it is Jesus shaped. And that is what you're looking for. You're not going to find it in another person. And you don't deserve to be feeling like you're never good enough. You're never worth anything. And I think the church makes an idol of marriage. And a lot of these counselors and pastors don't know how to deal with abuse. Or they're just completely ignorant to it. And they give bad advice to people that are in dangerous situations. And not just physically dangerous, but dangerous as in for people's health. It's not fair to make somebody feel like they have to be ill and they have to die in misery because they're with somebody that makes them sick. That's not what God intended for marriage. Our partners are supposed to be godly. And yes, we all have flaws. But if they refuse to get help, or they pretend, a lot of them pretend to be getting help, and they love bomb you and hoover you back in, hoover like a vacuum, they suck you back in with their good behavior for a while, and the minute they get you hooked again, it's time to stomp on you and to make you walk on eggshells again, and to make you feel like anything you do, they're going to discard you and throw you away. And it's a cycle over and over again. And this can be done by, like I said, friends, co-workers, parents, even children. If you have a child that acts up on holidays and you know they're just going to trash holidays, look at behaviors in the family. Like if you come from like a dysfunctional family, is there somebody in the family that's constantly starting drama on holidays and making people uncomfortable, walking on eggshells? Is there somebody that always, you got to watch out what you do or say around them on the holidays, because they will just trash everyone's good time and celebration? If you have a child that gets anxious and starts acting up before it's time to go to a family function, is it because they're reacting and preparing themselves for this, this day of worrying about who's going to be mad and who's going to fight? And it's just, you really got to look at those things. This affects your children. You have children that will walk around in a home with somebody who has you walking on eggshells, and you don't think for a moment that they have the children walking on eggshells too. Everybody in that house is walking on eggshells, not just the partner they're picking on. It's the children that are in earshot. Even if they don't do the stuff to the children listen to it. It affects them. It does the same thing to their adrenal gland and causes chronic illnesses and emotional and mental destruction to the children that are listening to it. That is abuse. Don't keep your children in abusive situations. Family court makes it impossible to help your children, to protect them from psychological abuse. They absolutely do. It's just that's another topic for another day. But please, there's a lot of people that cut people off and there's a lot of estranged families right now. Some were for stupid reasons, and a lot were actually because there's a lot of toxicity and there's a lot of this behaviors in family, and the parents just don't want to own up to it. They don't want to admit that they're like this, and some are so used to living like this, they grew up like this, they raised their kids like this, that they think it's normal. Then when, the children become adults and get out of the household, and they get around normal families and people who don't make you feel like you're a throwaway or you're never good enough, then the children walk away from those families. Most not without trying. Many try and tell the parents, hey, this isn't okay. And the parents just make excuses. And Christian parents just don't understand. A lot of them want the children to forgive them. Just because they know forgiveness, they think the children automatically need to forgive them. And they lie and say that the Bible wants us to reconcile and this and that. And the Bible doesn't tell us we have to reconcile with somebody who's been abusive. Yes, we are to forgive. We are always to forgive. But forgiveness does not call for reconciliation. It does not. And just because we're Christians doesn't mean our children have to forgive. And even if they claim to be Christians, they get to work it out, their forgiveness with God, between them and God. It's not for us to make them feel a certain way or tell them they have to forgive. It is part of psychological abuse, because you're missing God's word and making people feel like they have, or still, you shouldn't even be telling them they have to forgive you in the first place. You're just making the situation worse, honestly. But, all this to say that